Today's episode is the perfect way to kick off our May theme, systems and routines for your life and money. Because here's what I know about you. You set big goals, you work hard, you make good money, or you're building towards that. But if you also feel like you're juggling 100 tabs open in your brain at once, and no matter how productive you try to be, you still feel behind, this episode is for you. That's why I'm so excited for today's conversation. I'm joined by Megan Sumrell, founder of The Pink Bee and a time management and productivity expert who specializes in women building systems that actually work in real life, not just on paper. Today, we are talking about how to build systems that give you more time, more energy, and more peace without burning yourself out in the process. Because thriving isn't about doing more, it's about building smarter. Megan is the founder of The Pink Bee, a coaching and education company that helps women master time management through practical, repeatable systems. She's known for her focus on sustainable productivity, helping women to stop relying on willpower alone and instead build systems that remove decision fatigue. Megan is a working mom and entrepreneur who specializes in helping high achieving women move from reactive to proactive through strategic weekly planning and quarterly planning systems. Megan, welcome to the show. I cannot think of a better guest for today's discussion. Now, before we talk about systems and thriving, I would love to just start with you. What was happening in your life that made you realize you needed better systems?
Yeah, for me, it happened many years ago. I was juggling full-time career, and I had a 2-year-old at the time. And it was a beautiful Friday afternoon, and I'd done everything right that day. I got up early to get my hours in so I could take off a little early to take her to the park at the end of the day. And I was pushing her on the swings, and the stranger standing next to me, pushing their child on the swings, started chatting. And at one point in the conversation, she asked me, "What do you do for fun?" And it kind of rocked me to my core because I didn't have an answer.
Mm.
And I didn't realize my life had gotten to a point where I couldn't remember the last time I had done something just for me for fun. And it kind of sent me on a little bit of a spiral, but it sent me ultimately back to reviewing my calendar and this planning system I'd been using for 20 years. And I started flipping through the pages and realized for probably the last 5 years, every single thing on my calendar was in service to somebody else. It
Wow.
was me being an employee, me being a mom, me being a wife, me being a daughter, me being a volunteer. And I just, Megan, had literally disappeared from my calendar. And I see this happen to a lot of women, especially if they're juggling motherhood and work. And so that kind of set me on this path of throwing away my entire planning system, using the skills I'd acquired over 20 years doing Lean Six Sigma optimization, all of that, and basically created a whole new systematized approach to planning and managing my calendar that actually put me back in it again.
Wow. So, did that transition happen quickly? I mean, obviously, you threw everything from the past out and you started fresh, but did you see the results of starting fresh instantly, or
I'd say it
how did
was
that take?
over about 6 months.
Okay.
And I remember it because I was at a conference and there were some women there I hadn't seen in a while. It was a women in tech conference. And a couple of them came up and they're like, "You look so good. Like, are you doing something different? Like, did you lose weight? Are you going to the gym?" And I realized, and I said, "No, I actually have time for myself."
Wow.
And so I was like, all right, this is clearly this is having the kind of output that I wanted for my life.
Oh, it was working. Something was working,
Yes.
definitely.
Yes.
So, I mean, obviously, this is bigger than just time management, but I hear a lot of women in my community and my friends, just women in general, say, I just need to manage my time better. I don't necessarily think that's true. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that and what those women are usually getting wrong when they say that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, and it's hard because it's a phrase we use, right? I need to learn how to manage my time
Mhm.
better. It's not so much how to manage our time better, it's how to plan realistically.
Mm.
So, most of us, because this is pretty much what we've been taught to do, have a calendar that has our commitments on it that are usually commitments involving other people, right? A meeting, an appointment, taking a kid to a soccer game, or whatever it is. Then, separately, we have this long, massive to do list,
Mhm.
right? And so we think, and we're taught, okay, wake up every day, do your brain dump, make your list for the day, identify your top three. There's no scientific reason on why that number was picked, but identify your top three, focus on those first, right? And then magically get everything else done. That is not a plan.
Mm.
What that is it's a recipe for being in a constant state of overwhelm and burnout because that list is not realistic. It
Mhm.
creates intense decision fatigue and it keeps you further and further away from achieving your goals. So, for most women, it's not a time management problem. It's just that they've never been taught how to create a plan that integrates all the realities of their life into a realistic roadmap for the week.
Ooh. I mean, that's such a powerful statement. As someone who, lives by her to-do list, I definitely have those feelings of how am I going to get through all of this? And I think to your point, it's because it's not realistic. I'm not doing it the right way.
Well, and it's just the task list, there's three really subtle things here with it. First of all, when you make your list, no one really sits down and then goes, "Now, how long is each one of these going to take? And now let me go
Mhm.
look at my calendar and is this even mathematically possible?" Right? And if they did, they would likely see that 99% of the time it's not going to happen. Like the math just
Right.
doesn't add up. The second thing with that list is we wake up every day with a certain amount of really good brain energy to make decisions. And all day long, every time you make a decision, you're pulling from that energy bank, kind of like gas, right? It's slowly going. Every decision you make all day long depletes that gas tank. And
Mm.
the only way you fill it back up is by going to sleep. You have to physically rest to fill it back up. Well, if the harder the decision you have to make, the more energy it pulls. So
Wow.
if I sit in front of you and say, "Hey Ray, I've got an apple or an orange. Which one do you want?" Very easy choice, right? But still you'd pull a little bit. Now if I put in front of you a bowl with like 18 different pieces of fruit,
Hmm.
so what fruit do you want? Your brain's going to work a lot harder to pick one out because there's a lot of things that it's trying to prioritize and choose between. Well, when you translate this to your list, if you wake up in the morning and make a list of here's everything I need to do today,
Hmm.
there could easily be 20 things on there, right? Some are
Right.
2 minutes, some are 2 hours. Well, as soon as the list is done, the first thing you do is you go look at it and you ask yourself, what do I need? What am I going to do first? You're making a huge energy pull because there's a lot of things on that list.
Wow.
And
Okay.
every time throughout the day you go back to say, what am I going to do next is another decision. And this is what leads to decision fatigue by 2 p.m., right? Which then
Right.
spills into it's 5 o'clock and your partner's like, "Hey, what do you want to do for dinner?" And you're like, "Oh my God, please don't make me decide," right? I don't have it in me anymore. And then what's interesting is with that big list, when we look at it, we feel overwhelmed,
Mhm.
right? It's a lot. And so then our brain kicks in the same chemicals of that fight, flight, or freeze.
Mhm.
Like if you're, under physical stress, you get the same chemical response. So your brain does exactly what it's programmed to do, which is to make you feel better and to make you feel safe. When you have a huge list in front of you, what's the number one way we feel better? By checking something off.
Right.
So subconsciously, your brain is going to scan for the easiest thing it can do first. And
Mm.
9 times out of 10, it's not the thing, right? It's not the thing that's moving the needle. And so this is why we can be busy all day long, check 15 things off, and then at the end of the day, still feel like we really didn't get anything done because the
Mhm.
good, juicy, meaty stuff kept getting avoided because your brain's like, no, I need another check mark. And so we just stay in this vicious cycle of I'm tired, I didn't get it done, I'm getting further behind on the big important stuff, but I was busy all day, but I don't feel very accomplished. And it's how most people are operating day to day.
I feel like you described my life. I mean, as a business owner, I mean, there's a lot to do, and I love
Yes.
Asana, and I will schedule tasks, months or weeks in advance. And so when the day comes, I look at my Asana, and sometimes I see a list, and I'm like, how am I going to get all of this done? Yeah, let's start with the easy things and get those
Yeah,
done.
got to get some things off my plate.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And then to your point, I get home and my fiance is like, "What's for dinner? What do you want for dinner?" And you described it so perfectly. Like, please don't make me decide. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
I cannot make good choices anymore.
exactly. But I consider myself a high achieving individual. And so, I may have a lot of tasks and I get through them.
Mhm.
But I feel like I'm guilty of not giving myself recognition for that. I think I'm so quick to move on
100%.
to what's next and what the next task is because it seems never ending. In your opinion, why do so many high achieving women just feel overwhelmed, even if they're productive or even
Even if
when
they're
they're
productive.
productive?
Yeah. And again, this subtly kind of ties back to that difference of a task list versus a plan.
Yes.
So if you are really high achieving and a very productive person, I am. I mean, just like you, I can get a lot of stuff done in a very
Yeah.
short amount of time. But if I am constantly chasing this fantasy of I'm going to get everything that's living in my head completed in one day, I
Hmm.
am never going to feel like I'm caught up. Or if I finally get caught up, I'm never going to feel like I'm getting ahead, right? It's
Hmm.
like this, you're kind of sprinting, but you're doing it for an entire marathon because as you're going to bed, even if you had a magical day where everything was checked off, now the wheels are going for tomorrow. Okay, I've got
Yes.
to do this. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. So, this is why I love the way I teach weekly planning
Hmm.
because I am spending time prior to the week start mapping out here is what I am doing for the week, when I'm doing it, how long I'm spending on it. I
Hmm.
actually teach people how to what I call plan for uncertainty. I have time protected because I know things are going to come at me that I'm going to have to handle this week that I don't even know about yet.
Hmm.
And so then what happens is at the end of the day, I can say, okay, I executed my plan and that is now behind me. And I already know what my plan is for tomorrow. And
Wow.
when you build systems that allow you to, in the moment, when all of a sudden something comes at you or you think of something that you want to do, if you have the systems in place, knowing that type of information lives in this one place,
Hmm.
it's you start to train your brain to not feel like it needs to hold on to all the information. Because
Hmm.
whether you realize it or not, if you don't have those systems in place, you have that just ticker tape of constant reminders, thoughts, things running through. So we're
Yeah.
never celebrating what we've done because our brain is so noisy and it's filled with what still has to happen because we haven't gotten a system in place to get it out of our brain and into a tool that
Hmm.
then we have a set schedule on when we look at it.
Ooh, oh my gosh. I mean, it's very similar with budgeting and having a budget,
Yes,
right? Like you
exactly. I
can
mean, they
have
they are the
numbers.
exact same.
Yes. Okay. I see the direct correlation. Now, I know you teach this and you coach women through this. Can you just share maybe 1 to 3 simple steps for someone listening who maybe wants to start weekly planning or just start building that system so it can
Yeah.
get out of their head and somewhere else?
Absolutely. And I'll kind of tie it back to finance stuff as well, because I think,
Okay.
women following you are going to be very interested in that. So, one of the first things I want to encourage people to do is to figure out what is your already spoken for time every single week, even before you go look at your appointments and stuff on your calendar. Think of it like your recurring mandatory bills, your
Okay.
mortgage, your gas payment, your like whatever it is. We all have tasks that we do either every day or every week that just happen on a rhythm. And a lot of them are things that never show up on a task list,
Hmm.
but they take time. I mean, even think about meal prep, grocery shopping, laundry, chores, like, I mean, even as silly as walking my dogs. Well, that's 45 minutes of my day every day, right?
Right.
And so as you're going through the course of a week, start making a list. I call it my weekly recurring checklist, but think of it as like your monthly bills. All right, the
Okay.
ones that are always coming in that you have to pay, but do it on a weekly basis. Because what you need to figure out is at the start of every week, how much time is already spoken for, right? You may be
Mm,
looking at Monday through Friday, 8 open available hours. Well, the fact is, you may have 4 of those spoken for every single day in recurring tasks that just aren't currently visible on your calendar. So we
right.
need to get that math visible. And even as like a business owner, like for you, there's a podcast that gets out every single week, right? Well,
Right.
how much time every week goes to making sure that podcast goes out?
Mm,
Maybe you write a newsletter. How much time goes into that? So I know, like in my work hours, because I work very little, but I know that I have between 11 and 12 hours every week of my work time
mhm.
is already spoken for with my recurring task just to keep the lights on for the
Okay.
company, which means I have about 10 hours for project work every week. That's it. If I try and add on more, it's not going to happen.
Okay.
So, number one for everyone is get that list of those recurring tasks and put down next to them how much time they take. And see, is it a daily or is it a weekly rhythm? Because you need to know what is your actual available budget at the start
Mm,
of every day. Like what discretionary income do you have that you're
right.
working with? The second thing that I would encourage people to do is to create something similar to an emergency fund that you would with your finances, right? So I know my husband and I, every month, we have an auto draft of a set amount of money that just goes into a separate bank account that is there for, like, right now, we had a water leak.
Oh,
Well, thank goodness we have the emergency fund because it
yes.
is turning into a doozy, right? So everybody, and this is where I call it planning for uncertainty. Everybody will have some amount of time every week where things are going to come up that you have to do, that you did not plan for because you didn't know about it. And that budget is going to be different for everybody, just like a financial emergency fund would be. So, the best way to figure out what yours needs to be is over the course of a week, make a note anytime you are having to spend time doing something that you could not have planned for, right?
Okay.
You didn't know it was coming. So just last night, we got the text at 9 p.m. We're doing a half day closing at school tomorrow due to severe weather. Well, that was an unplanned event for me that now is meaning I'm working less time. So those are the kind of things you want to keep track of over the course of a week. And I encourage people to actually do it more than one week because we just want to get an average week over week. How many hours of your day or your week actually got hijacked by something you could not have planned for?
Okay.
So my budget right now is during working hours. I usually have about 4 hours of work that comes across my desk each week that has to be handled same week.
Hmm.
And then personally, about 3 hours.
Okay.
So now I know that's my emergency fund is four
Yeah.
hours during work, 3 during personal, which means when I'm creating my plan for my week, I proactively just scatter block 4 hours during working time on my calendar that's unavailable for anyone to book from me. And I'm not uh, ahead of time planning on how I'm spending it. It's just
Ah,
emergency money, it's emergency time.
okay.
So, for instance, tomorrow I had a block tomorrow morning for emergency time for an hour. Well, today I had planned on doing something from 12 to 1, but I got that emergency call that now I have to go pick my child up at noon. So,
Mm,
what I was going to do from 12 to 1, I slid it into the Tuesday morning 1 hour emergency block.
got it.
So it's kind of, you now get to, it gives you the space that you need to
Hmm.
move things around in your week. Instead of, if we don't have that, then what happens is we're working late or we're getting up at 4 in the morning to catch up or we're trying to work on the weekends because we were pretending that nothing unplanned was going to come at us, right? Which is just as unreasonable as pretending you're not going to have some financial emergency. The tires are going to blow, the water heater is going to leak or whatever. So if you can even just get that level of awareness about your time, what are your bills that you've got to pay in the form of time every week? And then how much time needs to be reserved for that emergency fund every week?
Hmm.
I will warn you, you aren't going to like the number that's left over. Which, just like with finances, sometimes we don't like going, that's all I've got like to
Right.
play with. Like, I don't love it. But if you can shift it to saying, this is going to empower me to make very different and intentional choices
Mm,
about where my time is going, And it supports me in knowing when I need to say no to requests for my time that come in. Because it's very easy to say yes if I think I've got all this time.
Right.
But if I know this is all that's left in my account, I get to be a lot more strategic and picky about my yeses and nos.
Oh my gosh, that is so helpful. I think, for me personally, stuff always comes up. I have rental properties.
Always.
I have
Yeah.
dogs and, family to take care of. And I struggle with handling those things when they come up because to your point, I don't have that emergency fund of time dedicated to for things to come up. And I think that would be a game changer. I also really love that it kind of forces you to be flexible, right? Because like you said today, you had your plan, but you have to move things around to make it work for tomorrow. And I, as a type A Virgo, can be very rigid and routine and structured, but that's essentially giving myself permission to be fluid, to be flexible, and to allow for things to change so I don't have to get all, nervous system
Yeah, and
dysregulated.
I don't like change in that capacity. I am definitely a still in recovery control freak type A person myself. But I think for a lot, and a lot of women will say that they are, but I think what's really happening under the root is we know we have a lot on our plate.
Mhm.
And it's like if one of those spinning plates falls,
Yes.
we feel like the whole thing is going to collapse,
Yes.
right? And so when you create plans that give you the flexibility to move things around when you need to, it still has this tremendous feeling of control and structure.
Hmm.
So when I got the text, did I love it? Did I love going, oh, I'm not gonna be able to do that thing? No, because I like what I like. I had the plan, I'd like to follow it. But if I didn't have my weekly plan done, and if I didn't have that emergency fund there, it would have been a domino effect, right? I would
Right.
have been freaking out. I wouldn't have figured out how to have done it. Instead, I still don't like it, but I didn't lose control over the situation because I could see, hey, you know what? I can just do this thing Tuesday morning instead,
Yes.
and everything's still going to get done on time. So it's like I'll even talk out loud to myself as I'm doing this. I'll be like, well, this isn't great. It's not what I want to be doing, but I've got the block Tuesday. So I'm going to erase what I was doing from 12 to 1 and write that in now on Tuesday morning. And now I know when it's getting done. And so now I still feel like I have control and that I
Yes.
know what's happening.
I love that. Yes. So yeah, just tell yourself what you need to hear and it
Yep.
is what it
Yep.
is. So one additional question on what you just shared. Um, Now that we've kind of identified how much time we truly have, we have to think differently about the work we have to do or the things that need to get done. Do
Yeah.
you have a method or a system or strategy for identifying what really does deserve the focus and what doesn't, especially when there's a range of tasks or things to do that kind of vary in priority?
Yeah, and there are so many flavors of the prioritization matrix that's out there, the
Mhm.
Eisenhower matrix and all of that. I will put a second kind of more deeper layer onto it that I really encourage women to think about. So, first and foremost is I always organize the things competing for my time. If they have a due date, then I want to organize it by due date with most recent at the top, right? So that way anything that has to be done by a certain day is not falling through the cracks.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't things on there that maybe aren't important.
Mm.
So, for example, you could have a coupon with an expiration date 2 days from now. Where you're like, if I don't get to the store and use this, I'm going to lose this coupon. But maybe the coupon is for something that if you really sat and thought about it, you're like, I really don't need that.
Mm.
But because things have dates associated with them, oftentimes people are just like, well, it has a due date, therefore it's going to get a priority. So I want to always remind people like, even though it has a due date, does it mean that this is something that you actually have to commit to doing? Is the
Mm.
consequence of not doing it really not that big of a deal, right? And maybe it's something you can just pass by. Now, for everything else, that especially if you're an entrepreneur, you make your own dates, right? So now it gets
Right.
tricky of how do I prioritize these? And there are a lot of different things to think about, especially if you're thinking as an entrepreneur. One layer I like to put in is like, what are the goals that I have for the business right now? and which one of these aligns to help meet some of those goals, right? So you may have a goal that is increasing revenue, and maybe there's tasks on your plate that don't have a direct line to revenue, right? So maybe you'd want to reallocate those that way. But
Mm,
underneath all of it, one of the things that I really, really love to lean on, and I guide women through an exercise of really understanding what are your core values in this season of life. Like,
mhm,
what is it that is most important to you right now for the next 6 months? Not task based, but when you think about your life, how do you want to feel? Where do you want to look back and say, I did this really well, or I spent time over here? For me, some of our core value, like we love music in our family. So making sure that there's always music playing as a core value, humor, the fact that we eat dinner together every night with no technology. That is just one of our core values. I have core values for my work as well around being authentic, around being reliable, very high standards. So when we're looking through all the things that are competing for our time,
mhm.
if we can't make the relationship back to this is in alignment with one of our core values, then that's a good sign for us that maybe that just gets to be at the bottom of the list for now. It
Mm,
doesn't mean never, it just means right now.
right. Another direct tie to finances, right? I mean, it's
Yes,
so easy to spend your
exactly.
money on things that really aren't in line with your values or the things that you want most. But it does force you to sit and think, and it's the same with your time.
Yeah, and people always ask me, well, Megan, how should I prioritize this? And just like you can't tell someone how to prioritize their savings accounts, right? I'm like, I can't do that for you. I
Right,
can give you questions to ask yourselves and things to think about, but I don't know what is more the most important thing for you. Only you can know that. But prioritizing is hard because we often don't take the time to really think about what matters most because we are so busy and we are
right.
so overwhelmed. And carving out that little space to put that thoughtfulness in really helps when there's tough decisions.
I completely agree. And to your point, it is sometimes it's hard to find the time to really get clear on that, but it's so important. And I'm very big on goal planning. And when I walk my community through New Year goals, why? Why do you have this goal?
Yes,
What does this goal do for
exactly.
you? What does it impact? And it makes all the difference.
Yeah, because you may find I have found myself where I'm looking at a goal, and when I start doing that why, I'm like, it's because I feel like I should, which means
Right.
this is not a goal for me, right? It's something
Exactly.
I'm letting someone else put on me instead. And so recognizing that is really important.
I want to transition a little bit to kind of a mindset shift as it relates to time. I feel like women can, hear the word system and just, I don't want to say cringe, but, just
It
feel
just sounds
overwhelmed.
awful, like
Yeah.
robotic and yeah.
Exactly. Like, oh, I have to dedicate time to doing this when I already have all this to do. What is maybe an easy or approachable way for a woman who is maybe struggling with hearing the word system to actually get started with it, especially if their life feels a bit chaotic right now?
Yeah, great question. And I think you can almost swap out the word system with routine.
Okay.
Right. So, like, I think about how I start up my day every morning. Well, I mean, there's like the getting out of bed, just habitual, the order that I do things and let my dogs out and get my coffee and all of that. Well, at the end of the day, that's a system, right?
Mhm.
A system is a series of things done in a particular order and way.
Okay.
And so when we start to think about like take a really close look at your life, chances are you have so many systems that you don't even realize are at play. Maybe even how you hang your shirts up on the hanger, right? Which way does the front of the shirt go? The right side or the left side of the hanger? That's a system. So when we start to think about if we can create just a step-by-step process or even follow a step-by-step process for how do I get the things competing for my time off of this list and into my calendar for the week, so that I am seeing here is my roadmap. Here's how I'm navigating through Monday, through Tuesday, through Wednesday.
Mhm.
If we can change our perception or our thoughts about systematizing to realize, no, what this is going to do is give you a rinse and repeat way to plan, which is so much lighter and easier than every week going, okay, I've got these sticky notes, I've got these emails, I've got these 3 notebooks, I've got my Todoist and my Trello board, and I'm looking at 12 different places trying to figure out what needs to get done this week. That's overwhelming. That is
Yeah.
not a system, and that keeps us in chaos. But we think that systems are way more complicated than they are.
Yeah.
So if you can get comfortable with saying, yeah, there are places in my life where doing things in a certain series of steps just makes it run really smooth, that's really what a system is. And so if someone has a system, which I'm sure you do with, setting up finance and can say, this is a playbook that works.
Hmm.
I've done all the testing and tweaking for you. You just follow the step 1, 2, 3. As you do it over and over and over again, then it just starts to become muscle memory and it becomes a habit. But you have to give yourself the understanding that it's not going to be easy the first time you do it, and probably not the second, but neither was learning how to ride a bike.
Right.
But now you can probably just get on it and start pedaling and not thinking about it. Well, the same is true with any financial planning systems or time planning systems. It's giving yourself permission to say, I'm learning something new. It's going to be uncomfortable, but I'm
Mm.
going to trust the process and follow the steps.
Uh, uh, so many good things you said. One thing that really stuck out to me is that, a system is just a routine. I don't know why for me that hearing routine just feels so much more comfortable, and I'm sure
Yeah.
people listening feel the same way, but they're one and the same, and it's
Mhm.
nice to approach it that way because we do know routines, can become habits, and it just doesn't require as much brain power, which we're trying to preserve anyway. So I think that's such a
Exactly.
great way to think about it and look at it.
Yeah,
I
and it's like we don't
also,
need to reinvent the wheel every
right,
week, right? Like, okay, now
exactly.
this is the process I'm going to follow. I mean, it's like making a recipe, right? You have a cookie recipe that you make 3 or 4 times a year. You're going to pull it out and you're just going to follow the steps rather
Right.
than trying to remember it and look in 20 books for it and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, you mentioned giving yourself grace. I think every woman or every person has a situation in their life where they were forming a routine and before they knew it, the routine, didn't require much. I think leaning on that and having that knowing and understanding can make giving yourself grace a little bit easier too.
Yeah, and recognizing just as, unfortunately, the world we live in today, kids go through high school, college, they're not taught financial 101, right?
Right.
We're not teaching children time management and planning.
Right.
And so women end up in a position where I hear it all the time where they'll say, oh, I just don't know how to plan, or, oh, I'm just so bad with money. And
Hmm.
they're taking it on as a personal fault.
Right.
Yet, if nobody ever taught you how to read, would you walk around going, I'm so dumb, I don't know how to read? Of course
Mm.
not. You'd say, I've never been taught how to read.
Right.
Well, this is through tools that you're providing with finances, through tools I'm providing with planning. This is because they're not being taught.
Right.
We are all entering the world without these skills. And so having the awareness of you're not just born with these skills or born without them. It's not like, oh, I didn't get the planning gene. No, you just haven't had the opportunity to have been taught that. And so
Right.
if you approach it with that mindset of, oh, this is a new skill, I'm going to need to learn it. It's going to take some time. And then it isn't going to feel so hard anymore.
I love that. And I that's such a good realization for people listening. I even see it with finances. Like women tell me, I do this for a living, or I do so many good things, or I'm so great at all these other things. Why can't I get this? And to your point, like if you were not taught it, you have to give yourself grace. Like you just have to. There's no other way to go about succeeding in that area.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So now that we know systems are essentially routines and we feel a little bit better about that when we hear the word, in your opinion, what are two or three just foundational systems that every woman needs, in her life and maybe should implement those before they even set additional goals?
Oh, now talking about time management routines.
Yeah, let's talk about
Okay.
time management routines.
So, first and foremost, it's almost more of breaking a habit. But it's you're in a routine that you don't realize you have. So sometimes creating a new routine is maybe breaking up with an old one.
Okay.
And I would say to so many people today are making yes and no decisions about their time by looking at their calendar on their mobile device, right?
Okay.
So you're out and about. Maybe you've just been getting your hair cut and you're leaving, and they're like, "Do you want to schedule your next hair appointment?" You're like, "Sure." So like, "Oh, let's look 6 weeks out or whatever." And you're on your iPhone or your Android, and you're going to that day
Uh-huh.
and you're seeing just that one day's worth of information, and you're like, yeah, sure, I can totally do that at 3 o'clock on that day. Then you go home and then you go look at the calendar view on your computer or your paper planner that shows you that week is like where everything is happening. Monday's a huge day, Tuesday's a huge, right? Wednesday's the big report due. And that little window that you just booked for your hair appointment or whatever it is was like the one day that you had free that week to get stuff
Ugh.
done. And
Okay.
this is why everybody's getting overbooked and overscheduled. You
Hmm.
are making decisions about your time with blinders on, with because on your phone, all you can see in detail is just that one day,
Right.
right? And we can't see what's around it to go, ooh, maybe this is not a great week and I should wait for the next week. So just get really comfortable with saying, let me check my schedule and I'll call you back. They
Okay.
now know when I leave from my haircut, I am not scheduling the next one. They know this from me now. They're like, we know that you'll call us tomorrow to schedule the next one. I'm like, I sure will, because now I can sit down and have all the information I need to make sure that I'm just not booked from the minute my feet hit the ground to when I go to bed every single
Yeah.
day. So get in the habit of always looking at a holistic week
Hmm.
before you just start layering in yeses and nos. So your calendar, your phone calendar can be a great reference. Like, oh, it looks like that might be a free day, but I just don't have enough information with the days around it to
Okay.
really make a good choice about that. The second thing that I would encourage women to do is to start thinking about creating in what I call information repositories for themselves. So when I work with people, I run this little free thing called a one notebook challenge that I teach once a year. And I always start off by saying, all right, I want you to think through how many notebooks, sticky notes, apps, journals, whatever, that you go to write down lists or information. And for most people, it's seven or more
Yeah.
because it's like the notebook at your by the foot, like in the kitchen, then the one at your bed so you don't forget. Then there's the notes app, but then there's the Todoist app, right? Then there's the notebook in the car. Then there's the actual audio voice, thing that our intention is good. We know I'm going to think of stuff and I'm going to forget stuff. So I need to have places to write it down when I'm
Right.
not like sitting right at my desk working. But then in our effort to have a place to put information wherever we are means now information is scattered all over the place.
Hmm.
So if I were to say, okay, let's go collect up all the places that tasks might be hiding for you that before we go and plan your week, if you're having to go round things up from more than three places, that's one of the first things that we need to fix.
Okay.
Uh, so I encourage everyone to, I have one, if you're a paper pencil writer like I am, I have one notebook only.
Okay.
And as I'm going throughout my day, if I'm taking notes on anything, it goes in there. If I think of something, it goes in there, right? Anything that's not on my plan for the week. Now, this only works if you actually go back and review it every week. So at the end of every week, I review my notebook and make sure all the information that I jotted down lives in its permanent home.
Okay.
Now, then people always say, well, what do I do when I don't have my notebook, right? Because I'm driving, I don't have my notebook with me. I want you to think about what is one digital tool that you already have a process for or a routine for checking regularly.
Okay.
So I'm older. I grew up on, email was the big thing in my 20s that came out. It was so revolutionary back then. But I check email. I check it 3 times a day. Things don't fall through the cracks when they come in through email. So if I'm out and about and I don't have my notebook and I think of that thing, I just send myself an email and I can do
Okay.
it hands free while I'm driving. So that way, If I'm at home, everything goes into the notebook. And if I'm not, I send, and I'll, when I sit down in the morning to check my email, I may have 4 emails from myself, right? Of different things that I thought of between the last time I was at my desk. But it minimizes all the places that I have to go look to
Hmm.
gather the information that ultimately is going to live in my to-do list that goes into my planner somewhere.
Right.
And so I would really encourage people to start streamlining one digital place and one physical place.
Okay. Okay. I feel like anyone can start with both of those
Hmm.
instantly. And again, you're speaking to me, Megan. I think about when I do my lash appointments, I book in advance, but I'm looking at my phone like, oh yeah, this is a good day. This is a good time.
Great.
And I will give myself a little credit. Like I try to do the same day and time every appointment. So I've already kind of mentally blocked that off. But
Yep.
you're right. There are times when I'm like, oh no, I'm traveling, or oh no, I didn't think about that. And what a game changer that could be.
Yeah, yeah. And it's, you want to just get it off your plate, right?
Right.
And then you're like, well, I'll forget to do the appointment. Well, sometimes when I'm leaving the hair salon, I'm sending myself an email. Megan, book your hair appointment tomorrow, right? So when I sit down, I'm like, oh yeah. And then now I've got my calendar in front of me and then I can call them and renegotiate that.
Yeah, it might seem a little bit harder in the moment, or maybe one more thing to do in the moment, but it ultimately helps your future self, which is, I
Yes.
mean, that's what we're
Yeah.
all about.
And I can do it while I'm walking back to the car, right? So I'm actually kind
Right.
of multitasking a little bit. I'm not wasting any time.
No, we're being as productive and efficient as possible.
Yes.
So I know in this conversation, we have connected the dots between finances and time management. Obviously, the women that are listening to this are very much focused on financial freedom. For women who want to thrive financially, in your opinion, I would love to hear how does time management impact a person's income and or their wealth building efforts?
Oh, I love this question. I see such an interesting relationship between three things with women. One being finances, one being time, and one being their physical like clutter or their
Hmm.
like where they live. And oftentimes there's usually one of those three that becomes a real pain point that they want to solve. And as soon as they start digging into one, the burn of the desire of getting the other two like really leveled up, they are also tightly correlated together. Because when you think about the systems that are involved, the planning, maybe the discipline in some ways, right? The same is true for all three. For me, it started with the time. And several years ago, I was like, okay, I now have this time problem under control, right? I'm no longer overwhelmed. Everything is getting done. Now, what if I applied that same sense of thoughtfulness, intentionality to finances? What
Mm.
would this do for our family? But again, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I went off and invested my time and money in learning more about financial operating systems. And when you have the mental bandwidth of no longer being overwhelmed and consumed by your to-do list in your time, that mental energy can now shift over. If you're an entrepreneur, maybe it shifts into building new revenue streams, which ultimately creates wealth. For me, it meant I now had time to go invest in a course all about investing, which has completely changed our wealth strategy for our family.
Mhm.
And so the more that we can get our time and our overwhelm under control, because if you're running on, zero fuel all day long, it would be very, very hard to keep your finances under control because it will
Right.
feel like one more overwhelming thing. And
Right.
so I consistently see a direct relationship between women. And sometimes they start with, I got my finances under control. Now I want my house under control. Okay, now I want my time under control.
Mhm.
And you will find that those three just interplay with each other beautifully.
I definitely agree with that. I'll almost even add health, right?
Yeah,
A lot of
yeah.
my clients, if they're kind of focused on getting their finances together, there's such a direct correlation to, oh, I'm trying to also get my health and my body together too. And you
Mhm.
mentioned like, once you kind of start thinking about one, it's just all the others kind of come into play. And I agree with that
Yeah,
completely.
because they all suck at that mental energy, right?
Yes.
If your calendar is stressful, your mental energy is gone. If your finances are stressful, it's pulling there. So, as we have a friend who calls it like fixing the leaks, as we repair the leaks in one, now all of a sudden we have the capacity to repair the leak in the other and the other. And I think that I mean, I just see it all the time. It levels up all of them
Right. Absolutely.
correspondingly. Yeah.
I definitely agree. What would you say to someone who maybe is spending all their time trying to make money or trying to get their finances in order? So they kind of feel like they don't have enough time, but they also don't have enough money and they're using all of their time to make more money. What would you say to someone who's maybe thinking like that? How could they break that loop?
So I would start with first having an actual set goal of what is enough money, right?
Mm,
Because there's what is enough money today, and that could change 3 years from now.
right.
I know when I was leaving corporate behind and going, all in on building this company. Well, there was a number. I was like, well, I need to hit this number every month financially in order to be able to contribute and, run our household and all of that. So I think step one is understanding what is that actual number need to be. And then from there, backing into rather than saying what is I'm not coming up with the word, the what I like people to focus on are what are the activities that I believe are going to produce the financial outcome,
Mm,
right? Because we can't guarantee that someone's going to buy our products.
right.
I can't. I mean, if I could wave a magic wand, that would be great. But what I can do is say, okay, but what are the activities that if I do these consistently, I believe these activities will then generate revenue. Now,
Mm,
maybe you're selling physical goods, and so the activity is actually making the objects that people are buying, right? But if you're selling something online, for me, like one of those is the podcast. We know that the podcast generates business for us. So that is an activity that we believe continues to be a driving force of revenue. And to realize it may take time to figure out what those activities are. But
mhm.
if you're not documenting it and tracking it, you are going to spread yourself and never give it enough time to figure it out. So
Right.
I will commit to, okay, this is the activity that I believe is going to hit me closer to that number. I am going to commit to doing it consistently for
Mhm,
X number of weeks. At the end of each week, I'm going to check in. Did I do the activity?
mhm.
If the answer is no, well, I can't say that this doesn't work then, because that's what has to be like, see, it didn't work. I'm like, but you didn't actually do it.
Right.
So, I mean, similar to like, maybe you're on a health journey, right? Well, I believe if I run X amount of times a week, X is going to happen. Well, if you're running, but you're not seeing the results, then maybe that's not the right activity. So then
Mm,
we get to say, okay, I did the activity, but I didn't get the results. Great. Now I'm going to try a different activity and
mm,
test that out. But when I see people, and when you're building the activities, you get to layer in what is my actual time capacity here? Do these match? Am I setting myself up for failure? Because maybe I'm saying I'm going to train for a marathon in 2 months, but I can't even run 1 mile today.
right.
But if you were to map that out, you'd say it's impossible with the time that I have to hit the goal of running a marathon.
Right.
And most people just jump in and start going
Mm,
without taking that step back to say, here's the end goal. What are the activities? How long is it going to take to get there? Is this even the right path in
mm,
order for me to get to, the money that I need to be earning to working on that? Because I know early in business, there were things I really wanted to do, but the time to completion wasn't going to happen to get the money in the door that we needed in the short term. So
right.
decisions were made early on to get that going that then we could let those go when suddenly we had a different capacity.
I'm, putting myself in the listener's perspective for someone who maybe has like a job, a corporate job, and they are, spending all their time trying to make as much money as possible. And they don't really know, they're not seeing the results, right? Because all their time is going into their job. And so just hearing what you explained, maybe some things that they could do are, be realistic about potentially starting a side hustle or potentially starting something that can help bring in more money. Maybe it's making sure that outside of their job or their corporate world, they are leveraging their time efficiently. So maybe they're not spending so much money, so the money that they earn can impact them more. Um, it sounds like it still comes back to time and managing your
Yes.
time, but also being mindful of how much time it could take to get where you're trying to go.
Yeah. And, when I was in that transition of still working, but wanting to build this, it was very intentionally saying, well, I could do what hustle culture tells me to do, which is the minute I get home from work, grind out, the side job till 11 p.m. But I did that for 20 years in corporate. I was like, I don't want to do that. Plus, I was too old to do that. Plus, I had a young daughter at home. So it was very intentional family decisions. And it started with 2 nights a week. I go work for 2 hours after dinner. And the
Okay.
family knew that. We knew which nights it was. And then the nights that I wasn't working,
Hmm.
meaning I was truly present with my family. But there was a trade-off of I got the business off the ground slower than some other women that I was in coaching programs with, but I was fine with that because that was the choice I was making with my time.
Right.
Other women made different choices with their time, and that was perfect for them. Because again, that aligned with their core values and where their priorities were at that season. But if you are not getting it into your calendar and putting down, like, here is the time slots that I have for it, it is going to feel very chaotic
Yeah.
and you will kind of feel like you're not sure where you're going, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And I love the way that you gave that example. It's managing expectations along with managing your time, right? And just
Yeah.
being realistic, but also being clear on what matters most to you. If spending time with your family matters, you have to make sure that time is there. If making money matters, you have to make sure that time is there, but you also have to find that. I don't believe in a perfect balance, but you kind of have to give yourself that room to obtain or work towards balance.
Yeah, and if you've got kids at home, get creative on how to involve them. I brought my daughter in doing all sorts of stuff at different stages of business. She got really into graphic design stuff for a while. So I would have her making thumbnails in Canva.
Wow.
So she could be in my office with me and I could be working on something while she was helping out. So, I mean, if you've got kids, I would encourage you find if things moved slower, right? But it was things were still moving, which
Yeah.
was better than not moving at all. And she's kind of seeing what does it mean to be a business owner, right? And
Yeah.
so now she still does a lot of digital support for us during the summer
Wow.
as well. So, and I started her getting her involved in the business when she was only 7 years old. So you can get creative.
I love that, Megan. I really do. That reminds me of my mom. I would always look for ways to make money when I was little, and she worked at an insurance company, and so on the weekends when she would have to go to work, she would take me, and I would just file, paperwork,
Yep.
busy work. But it really did teach me the value of working hard, and it made me appreciate my mom's effort. So I love that. It's
Yeah,
such a
and
good
and you're
idea.
and we get that time together. Like kids are
Yes.
great at organization. Like how many of you have a completely disorganized Google Drive and you would love to have consistency in how all your files are named? That's a great job for your kid to come in and do with you. And I always pay her for her time. Sometimes it's in the form of, we get to go to the store and get you something you want, or sometimes it's true, like putting money into her bank account. But yeah, I always trying to think outside the box. It doesn't have to be black or white. I'm either working or I'm not working, especially if you've got kids at home. I get creative on how can I blend the two together sometimes in a way that we both are enjoying.
I love that. That's wonderful advice. You've shared so many great insights in this episode. I would love to hear a little bit more about what you do and where my listeners can connect with you and learn more from you. Could you share that with us?
Yeah. So, if you're listening to this, obviously you're a podcast fan. So, I do have a podcast called Work Life Harmony. Again, I don't believe in balance as being achievable. So, we focus on getting harmony in our lives. So, you can definitely come check that out. And if you're interested in kind of getting a deeper understanding in what this time management framework is that I teach, it's actually a course that's always available. It's DIY. All the video courses are pre-recorded. I do live calls once a month. So women are joining the program every day. And I've got some great info on it and a little teaser kind of teaching a little bit of that weekly planning framework in my app. So I always recommend it's in Google Play and the App Store. It's called the Pink Bee. It's all one word. It's totally free. And there's a couple pre-filled courses in there waiting for folks. And I promise you, they're short. They're succinct. If you are coming to me, I know you do not have a lot of time on your hands, so you're never going to open a video and see it's like 75 minutes long. I get in and get out pretty quick.
Perfect. I will make sure to link to that in the show notes. And then is there a social media platform that listeners can follow you on?
Yeah, I'm mostly active on Instagram. So at Megan Sumrell, you can find me there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Megan. This was such an insightful conversation. I feel like I've learned a lot, and I know my audience did too. So I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you.